whether you're on a big platform, like one of like the really big mega churches, or if you're a pastor of a small church, no matter what, you are put on a platform. And that is where devastation can happen if you isolate yourself. So my biggest encouragement is find community for yourself, because if you do not have accountability for you and friends that are other pastors, and honestly, probably across the United States, like find people that are not necessarily in your area, because sometimes if it's in your area, there's a little bit of competition. Find no way to have a competition, really. And then just choose authenticity, because if you have that allows you to be a better pastor and more available to the people that are in your community that need you most.
Welcome to the Post-Christian Podcast, where we help you make disciples in our increasingly post-Christian world. My name is Eric Bryant. I'm the campus pastor at Gateway in South Austin and Gateway Austin Online. I'm also the founder of Catalyzing Community. Sign up for our email newsletter at ericbryant.org and we'll send you free resources. Well, on today's episode, I'm happy to have with me Jenni Wong Clayville. How you doing, Jenni?
I'm doing great, Eric. Thanks for having me on. This is going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. I have been your Facebook friend for 20-something years, or however long Facebook's been around.
Back when Facebook was cool.
That's right. That's right.
And also at the beginning of what it was Twitter then, and then Instagram. So all of that, right?
Oh, yes, a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And it was so fun. I've been following your adventures online. And then one day I'm on YouVersion and you're giving the devotional. And I was like, oh, there's Jenni,
Yeah.
And I've seen you on there a lot, but your day job is there at National Community Church, leading the NOVA, Northern Virginia campus.
Mm-hmm.
You're on the teaching team. How long have you been a part of National Community Church?
We're coming up to 6 years now. And so, I kind of worked my way across the country. And so, I've gotten to, I got here and we were here for a little over a year and then COVID hit. So it just feels like some people have said, like, I feel like you've been here forever. And some people are like, oh, you just got here. So it's just kind of crazy how time feels different to everybody.
It's very, very relative. Obviously, I knew you through your sister, who was a part of Mosaic. And talk about ministry post-pandemic. It's obviously altered things for many.
Sure.
You guys are very creative, innovative. I'd love to just hear some of the major changes you've made leading your campus, and even as a church, how you guys are reaching and making disciples nowadays.
I know COVID was really difficult. I think when we shut down, it was, as a pastor who is kneecap to kneecap with people and trying to love them, it's very physical, like you're there very holistically with them, but then you take that physical aspect out. And here in the DMV area, so DC, Maryland, Virginia area, we have a lot of people that transfer in and transfer out. So a lot of young people, a lot of single people, and so they just ended up being very isolated, right? And so I think also something, the history of National Community Churches, we were called theater church before. And so everything was in theaters, everything was on a screen. That's kind of how we did campuses. And coming back from COVID, I think not everybody, but the mass majority kind of create these new rhythms of church, of how important is church, which is probably like a long theological question and conversation that we can have of like, how are we meeting the needs of people? But secondarily, maybe not secondarily, but another issue would be that they no longer want to get their sermons from a screen. And so if that's like really what we do a lot of, what did we have to switch? What did we have to do to kind of meet people in this evergreen space, right? And so one of the big things we did was we did a lot more live teaching. So the campuses became more intentional in having like that face-to-face and just really like holding that tension with people that it's okay, especially being in the nation's capital, it's okay to sit in the tension of all these feelings, not just political, but emotional, and how family has changed for them. Almost everybody, all of our campuses at the time, we had 8 campuses during COVID. Every campus pastor lost people. to COVID. And it was, how do you do a funeral, in the middle of lockdown and all these things. So, it changed a lot here, how to support a government that we live, that this is our country, but also how to support people well, seeing each and every one individually.
Yeah. Well, and with 8 campuses, I imagine they were in different areas, cities, counties, different rules. I mean, we had to navigate that as well. We're in 3 counties. Of course, more recently we've consolidated. So sounds like as you guys as well. So not only making fewer locations, but being more present, teaching live. How are you seeing coming into, 2025, the resurgence or return of folks? Are you seeing new folks? What are some of the ways that really National Community Church there in Northern Virginia looks and feels different even than before?
Yeah. And I know you talked to Pastor Mark and Pastor Heather. It just is very different in our areas. With Northern Virginia, we saw people having this, the longtime NCCers, they would come back maybe every 3 weeks at first. And that was their new normal. We ended up seeing a lot of new people. I would say specifically in Nova, because we actually merged, we partnered 3.5 locations into one. And so now it's a big location, but before, when everyone was coming back, it was slow trickling. And we noticed a lot of new people. They were, because it's pretty transient here anyway, so people are moving, people are new areas, and so we were just seeing people just kind of come in, and that's how we actually found out, oh, this screen, like people preaching on a screen is weird, because people want to come back and have a live connection with somebody. So a lot of new people moving in, a lot of, I would say the majority of Nova is new since the pandemic. So Yeah.
It's interesting. We've had 2 people this fall for their very first Sunday show up and want to get baptized. They basically found our campus online and started watching, and there was no reason to be in person until they were ready to really follow Jesus. Yeah. And so we're kind of experiencing this interesting, people who didn't ever come to church before the pandemic now come every single week. They don't know different. And then those that used to be a part of everything we were doing are rarer. How are you making disciples? Like, what are some of the things, whether it's groups or one-on-one, have you made adjustments or changes? Or what are you finding most effective to get the folks that do come on Sundays into community where they're actually looking at the scriptures together and in each other's lives?
That's a great question, Eric, because I think that's probably the one thing that's been consistent. I think the avenues of how we reach people are different. So groups were always in person. They were always NCC is pretty big, so we just wanted to make a big church feel small, which is part of why we did, it was like theater church. You could only allow so many seats, right? And so now it got bigger and bigger, excuse me, but they're bigger and bigger. And just to make sure people are seen and they're in community with each other, in a reflection to how our God is in community with himself. And so we are very much still pushing everybody towards groups. What a group is, what a community is, looks different. We've noticed a lot of people are connecting even outside of maybe a registered group, and we are all for it, because I think people just want that connection. We're seeing more and more, maybe not as much as during COVID, but more compared to before COVID, groups online. People that just want that quick connection. They know they need a connection, but their schedules look so different. And so, we have not only like long-term discipleship groups, Bible study groups, etc., but we have now quick pop-ups that might be with a semester or trimester. So that might be a 5 to 6 week kind of a study. And the idea is, here's an interest point for you. Let's talk about it. But did you enjoy having conversations with people? If so, maybe join a group for longer, because I'm called to be a pastor, but I'm only one person, and it's impossible to connect with every single person in the church the way I want to and have these long conversations. So we have to be able to delegate and also just find community within the church. It doesn't end with the pastor. It has to be within the community. So some things are the same, and just the avenues of how we get that, connect that is different now.
Yeah. Well, and then you mentioned lots of new people. Obviously, Google helps us grow, people
Yes.
new to a town, of course.
Totally.
But how are you seeing that person that's really trying to follow Jesus? They're part of National Community Church and they're reaching out to their friends. Are you seeing that happen more? How are you mobilizing, or what advice do you have to try to move folks from not just being consistent, not just being in groups, but seeing themselves as missionaries to where they are?
We're a very missiological church. And so we are on mission. We try to talk about being on mission every day. And so, I can speak for Novus specifically. We aren't trying necessarily. Our number one goal is not to try to get them to church. Our number one goal is for us to be the church in our communities. So we're not saying a house church. We're not saying, groups play into it, but also, hey, when your neighbor has a baby, how are you pulling your neighborhood together and, getting meals to them? That is, what that looks like now. It's interesting because there are a lot of people that have maybe set foot into NCC Nova maybe once or twice, and they would say that that's their church. And I'm like, how does that happen when we've only seen you once or twice? But it is because on a weekly basis, whoever is around them that is a part of NCC, we call them NCCers, are reaching out. There's connection, and they're, for all intents and purposes, like pastoring their community. And so, that's been really fun. One example is in our neighborhood, my neighborhood. When we moved here during COVID, we've lived in this house 4 years now, and this is the first house I've not had a garage in. And at first I was like, what? No garage? Because really you get in the car, it's freezing or it's really hot. But the blessing in disguise is no one here has garages. And so we're forced to say hello to our neighbors and stand outside and chat when we pull in. Our dogs are all friends. Our kids in the neighborhood, like I think I have the oldest kids in this neighborhood, but all the kids are playing in the cul-de-sac all the time, and they're like, "Oh, watch out for the cars!" And when our dogs run out, they know each dog's name, And we had a cul-de-sac party with our neighborhood. Everybody ate outside. Everybody brought something, and it was just like, hey, and it happened kind of during COVID because we couldn't go into each other's houses and we couldn't go to other people. Like, so it just became this community. And the neighbor we know just had her second baby, and everybody's kind of brought something, and it's just, where are you? And that includes like at work and for students at school. What does that look like? And I think the urging and the encouragement to become more creative in how people see you as a Christ follower that leads to who Christ is kind of the whole point of how we do things now.
I think that's really well said, that we really need to have our eyes open, our hearts open to what God might want to do. And if we're all thinking, today God wants to do something in me, but also through me, it starts to open possibilities.
Yeah.
I'd love to give you a chance to just encourage some of those pastors that may be discouraged, ready to give up. What helps you keep going as you've been pastoring all these years?
So this is specifically for pastors. I would say, get out of your neighborhood, kind of get out of your church. Now your parishioners, your people, your church is so important, but our culture, whether you want to or not, does the whole celebrity Christian thing. And whether you're on the platform, on a big platform, like one of like the really big mega churches, or if you're a pastor of a small church, no matter what, you are put on a platform. And that is where devastation can happen if you isolate yourself. So my biggest encouragement is find community for yourself, because if you do not have accountability for you, and friends that are other pastors, and honestly, probably across the United States, like find people that are not necessarily in your area, because sometimes if it's in your area, there's a little bit of competition. Find no way to have a competition, really. And then just choose authenticity, because if you have that allows you to be a better pastor and more available to the people that are in your community that need you most. We just see so many leaders fall because they don't feel like they have someone. And I'm not making excuses, because failure is failure, especially moral failure. But I would love to see the church own that a little bit more and not just place it all on that leader, because they also felt kind of trapped in that space. So yeah, that's kind of a long-winded way to say, get in community yourself. Don't just preach it, but find people that are equally yoked with you outside of your community that have the guts to tell you, hey, I don't know if that's a good thing that you're doing. Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
So all of us need it.
Using YouVersion, I'm certain your folks there at your campus are seeing even you on YouVersion as a way to get them using the Bible on their phone. How did you get involved with them, and what are some of the resources that you've helped create there?
Yeah, YouVersion is incredible. So I used to work at Life Church. So that Life Church is what created YouVersion. And so I think that's really my connection there. People always ask, how'd you get there? And I'm like, I really don't know. I have no idea how I landed. I'm just very grateful that they think my content is worthy of sharing. Cause I'm not a celebrity. I'm not anything special, except that God chose me and I have a curious mind. So that's really it. That, like, all of us are extraordinary in our own way. And so I will say that, I'm not more, I'm not less. I just am who God has called me to be. But I will say there are so many resources. I love YouVersion because it's free. One, download it. You can look up any speaker or any verse of the day share that's like a spiritual guidance thing. I have not written one all by myself. I'm kind of against that. I shouldn't say that, because watch me next year write one just by myself. But I like to collaborate with bigger groups. And so there are a bunch by Leading and Loving It, which was founded by Lori Wilhite and Brandy Wilson, basically for women, but there's some marriage stuff in there too that Bryant and I helped. So there's a few in there. If you follow me on YouVersion, you can see some of the ones that I have highlighted there. I think I helped write a devotional with NCC as well. But most of my stuff has been like verse of the day things that they let me be a part of. So those are great. But there's a lot of great resources that are coming out right now. There's a really good Advent one that came out with Chris Kane and Lisa Harper. I can just speak from like female stuff. Chris also wrote one recently for Flourishing. It's like her whole, I just love her. She's so real. She's so great. So I'm not like just fangirling right now. She's like just a good friend. She's a real person. And so, there's a lot of resources out there. I think if you look for it, you'll find it. And I think, Eric, you're doing a great job of just giving resources. I think that's our thing as pastors, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't end with us. Our job is to resource the listener or resource the one that's sitting there so that they know how to find God on their own. It's not through us. We're just we're just stewarding our time here to the best that we can. So,
that's right.
YouVersion's great, but there's so many free ones. I love Bible Project. You can find anything on Bible Project. So, those are some solid ones.
Well, thank you for taking some time. You can find Jenni on YouVersion.com, but also at national.cc. Thanks for all you're doing. Keep up your great work.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to the Post Christian Podcast. For free resources, go to ericbryant.org and look for something new coming for church leaders in April 2025.